Hi guys, it's April. It's time to wrap up the last part of December. And guys, I may have gone a little nuts. I said I was probably going to go nuts, and I did go nuts. I have, I think, like 18 different pieces of reading that I actually decided to plow through in this last part of December, and it was glorious. It's safe to say that 2016, reading-wise, ended very well for me, even though the rest of it left me a little sad. The first thing that I picked up in this last half of the month was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. This, of course, is a Alice in Wonderland precursor that explains how the Queen of Hearts and the Hatter and the March Hare and all of those little characters that you come to love in the Alice in Wonderland adventures, how they got to where they were when Alice finally showed up. This was such a wonderful read. I love how Marissa Meyer can take a fairy tale and weave in elements and make it something completely new. And there's not just Alice in Wonderland, there's also other little children's fairy tale and Edgar Allan Poe-esque references, which I just grasped onto, as you can tell. I did a full review over this book. If you want to go check that out, I'll link that down below and above my head somewhere. But overall, I really enjoyed this read. I then picked up Shadow Shaper by Danielle Older. This is the story about Cassandra, who loves to draw and create, and she starts to notice that the murals around her part of the city are starting to fade, but they're also starting to change at the same time they're fading. They're crying, they're screaming, and she doesn't quite understand why all of this is happening. But through a series of events, she comes to realize that the dead may be inhabiting these murals and that she may have some extra special powers that are connected to this spiritual mural thing going on. I liked picking up this book because it was a different read for me, because it's got a more diverse set of characters that I'm not necessarily used to. So I liked hearing from that voice, and I liked the supernatural element of how they pulled the dead and some of that culture in with it as well. There are points in which I think it could have been fleshed out more, but overall I did enjoy this read. I finally got around to reading Stealing Snow by Danielle Page, and I struggled with this one a little bit, just like I did with her other books. I should have known that was going to happen, but this was brought to me as if it was a Snow White retelling, where Snow is in an institute. She's starting to see things and hear things, and you can't really tell what is real, and in the end she ends up in this different place altogether in which she has to try to defeat the king because he is freezing everything. Now, while I went in expecting this to be a Snow White retelling, there were elements of Snow White thrown into it, but to me it felt more like a Snow Queen retelling, which I can see how you can merge those together, but first of all, it wasn't what I was expecting, which is good, but at the same time, there were elements in the story that drove me absolutely insane. I was trying to understand through this whole thing why every single boy that Snow interacts with ends up falling in love with her. That started to annoy me a little bit, and a lot of the characters came off really flat and really one-dimensional and very stereotypical. It just was not something that I truly enjoyed. I liked where the story could have gone, I just didn't really like the execution. That and some of the twists that supposedly came in the story, no. There are other retellings I would prefer over this one. I got around to this one, Starflight by Melissa Landers. This is the story of Solara as she tries to find a way to the outer reaches and somehow ends up the servant of Dorian because he was the last one to board the ship and she had no other choice if she wanted to get there. Through a series of events, they end up switching roles and on a pirate ship, which is great. And then this whole thing just takes off where Dorian is trying to figure out what is going on with her family, and Solara is just trying to find a place where she can go and survive after everything that's happened to her. This story was a lot like Firefly. It had a lot of those elements, especially in which the way the crew interacted, which I truly enjoyed. And at the same time, it had that element of a Korean drama where you've got that rich boy and you've got that poor down-to-earth girl girl who are always at each other's throat, but you know something is gonna happen and things are gonna change and they're slowly going to fall in love with each other. I did enjoy those elements, but at the same time, there wasn't anything that really grasped me about the story, and it's one of those things that you truly enjoy while you're reading it, but then you get a week or so away from it and you're like, what happened? I know there was something there, it just didn't retain the way I expected it to, and so it'll be interesting to see where this story goes from here, but overall, it wasn't completely overwhelming, but it was fun to read. I then read The Last Star by Rick Yancey, which is the last one in the Fifth Wave trilogy. I struggled through this one. My family can attest to how much I talked back to this story. There are points in this story where I'm just like, just get on with it. Just go on and sacrifice yourself. I don't care anymore. All of you are just ridiculous. I don't care. And so, overall, I didn't really enjoy it. I can kind of see why they decided to take the story in the directions they took it, but at the same time, it was like, yeah, I can see this coming from like a mile away, and you don't need all this like other stuff in between, because it became this cycle of, let's go rescue someone. Oh no, somebody else got taken. Let's go rescue that someone else, and there's just this cycle, and I'm like, really? Really? And like I said, I understand why some of it had to happen the way it did, but there was points where I was like, no, I'm just gonna, so, yeah. Then I got the joy of reading Spookshow 7, Cordelia by Tim McGregor. This is the continuation of Billy and her ghost seeing ways. This time around, we get to see Cordelia, who has a interesting backstory, to say the least. She is a witch, psychic lady. I don't know how to describe her. She's got interesting stuff going around her, just say it that way. Some of the evil spirits are coming back in this one. Billy has to figure out how to deal with all of those at the same time of being fired, which, as most of us know, trying to deal with finding a new job and then adding spirits trying to take you down at the same time, that can be a little disconcerting. I really like seeing the characters fill out even more, and I really want to see where some of these characters can go in the next one, and I continue to believe that Half-Boy is the greatest guardian angel ever. I then listened to Books of Lies by Brad Moltzer with my parents on the car trip up to and down back from my grandparents' house. And this is a very interesting story in which you get biblical references squished in with Superman. Yes, Superman. Basically, all of this comes to head when Cal is reunited with his father after a long absence, and people are shooting and chasing, and everyone is trying to get their hands on this Superman memorabilia. I don't know how much more to explain this story to you without like completely unraveling it for you. It was a fun read and perfect for a car trip. So my brother got me this book for Christmas, and then proceeded to harass me until I finally picked it up and started reading it. And then when I finished it, he was a little flabbergasted that I decided to read it that quickly, and then is now threatening to get the rest of the Dune series for me. This, of course, is Dune by Frank Herbert. This is a little hunker of a book. It was not what I expected it to be. I had been avoiding this story because it is a fairly well-known story, and giant sandworms. I knew that was part of it, and I didn't know if it was going to be something that I truly enjoyed, but in the end, I am surprised at how quickly I just fell into the story and how quickly I read it and how much I fell in love with the character of Paul and his mother. I'm afraid to continue on in the series because I can just guess how everything is going to fall apart as next generations come into this story. Yeah. Oh, and I do now want a sandworm pet. Someone want to get that for me? That would be great. I received a copy of The Silent Songbird by Melanie Dickerson for a review. I have read several of Melanie Dickerson's stories before, but I've reached the point where I think I've outgrown her writing, and I really felt it in this story. This is a historical Little Mermaid retelling in which Evelyn, who is the king's ward, is being forced into a marriage that she doesn't agree with. So she runs off, hides her voice, and ends up at the estate of Wesley Lewis. The characters in this story came off really, 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 really annoying at points. Mainly because they didn't have a lot of substance to them. And I wish I could say that the story carried them through, but at the same time, the story was so basic as well that all of it ended up being this really simple mass of a story, which is great for a quick, fluffy, don't turn your brain on kind of read, if that is what you're looking for. But if you want something with some meat to it, this isn't the story. I like the concept of doing a historical retelling, especially The Little Mermaid, because I love The Little Mermaid. But I just got annoyed at the characters and some of the ways they were forced to act and then would randomly change in the story, and nothing was really holding any of it up. So I struggled a lot through this book. But if you're looking for a fairy tale retelling with a historical twist and a Christian background in it as well, this would be a great read, especially for a younger audience. And of course, my boyfriend got me this beautiful book for Christmas, and I had to proceed to go through the story because Harry Potter is a part of my being at this point. So as all of these come out, I'm gonna have to get my hands on this. This, of course, is the second one in the Harry Potter series, and I really, really like the illustrations that went along with the story. I opened to a page that has very little illustrations. You're welcome. This one has got to be my favorite page of the whole lot, just because of the notebook style of the illustrations. I can't wait to see what they do with all of the other books as well, especially the bigger ones. That's going to be a bit of a nightmare, but it's going to be a fun nightmare. And finally, where I just decided to go crazy for the last part of the month is my roommate got me the first 3 volumes of the new Sailor Moon mangas for the anniversary that just came out, and so I had to read them. So I read them, and then I went down on my shelf and I'm like, I know I have some of my originals down here somewhere, and of course I did. So I then proceeded to go through all of these. These are the ones that are in chronological order, you know, they just flow together. I have several more, but I need to fill the gaps. But it was interesting to see how the translation and therefore the story changed, because these are 2 different translations right here. This is a more Americanized version, and here they stick more to the original story, and I really like that about these new ones. When I went back to these old ones, I questioned why did we go this direction? And it's probably because these started coming out at a time where anime and manga were just starting to flood the scenes over here, so they were trying to Americanize it in a way so we would accept it more. But I really, really like how they stuck more to the story in this one. I like how they kept the original names and didn't change it. And I've also realized while reading these that the anime really butchers the characters when they get a hold of them. They take little elements of each of the characters and blow them up to a proportion in which they get really annoying, but in the manga they make so much more sense and you like them so much more. Yeah, this was my childhood right here. My childhood. Oh, I really, really like them. Yay. And that was the last half of December. It was crazy and it was wonderful, and now 2017 is here. And we shall see what all of that brings. Tell me down below what book you are reading right now, and I heart your beautiful faces. Bye.